Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla and I have Carly Baker with me today, and we are so glad that you are here. Our goal is to talk about mental health related issues because we want to end the stigma surrounding them. So Carly, here's the thing that I find whenever I meet a new client. I'll ask, have you ever been formally diagnosed with anything? And even if they've been to a therapist before, almost everybody said they have no idea.
Okay.
What's your take about clients knowing their diagnoses?
Well, first, let's just, acknowledge diagnosis is a touchy subject. Some people like diagnosis, some people don't. I personally say that diagnosis can be very helpful on occasions, specifically when it comes to psychoeducation. When you understand how your brain functions or how you respond to certain stimulus within your life, you're better adept to be able to handle it and change those responses if you want to. And a lot of times, by learning about what your diagnosis might be, you learn a little bit more about your inner workings, and that can help a lot in different situations with your life. The more you know, the better.
Sure. Sure. So maybe I come in and I've been to therapists before, and we know, unfortunately, that there has to be some form of diagnosis if we're going to bill insurance. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way of the world. Uh, but how do you help somebody understand why you diagnosed them with whatever they had? Or even so, like, so maybe you say to me, Carla, after talking to you, it really seems like you're in a pretty significant state of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe I'm like, no, I'm not depressed. I don't know what you're talking about. Or, maybe I think that's a death sentence or something, I mean, who knows what, I mean, everyone's got their different take on it because there's such a huge stigma around mental health. How do you help those clients, understand more clearly what's going on?
Okay. And I like that question actually, because let's be honest, a lot of people don't really know what's going on with diagnoses, and there is a lot of stigma. So people hear a term and they're like, "Oh God, no, that's not me."
Mm-hmm.
And so usually I just like to start with the basic of understanding what they know about the diagnosis. And what I've come to find is a lot of times when people are concerned about a diagnosis that they might have, what they know about that diagnosis is usually a lot of stigma based stereotypes that
You mean that the only way I can be depressed is if I don't brush my teeth?
right, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly.
Or my
So
hair's all oily and greasy and I don't take care of myself? Right,
exactly,
right.
exactly. So it's these negative connotations about what a diagnosis actually might be. So starting with psychoeducation and kind of learning what is depression, how does it actually affect your brain, opens up that door. So then people be like, oh well, actually maybe I do want to look into this if that's how it's affecting me. Maybe this is something that is important that should be paid attention to. So just helping build that understanding, because a lot of times there isn't a lot of understanding. When do we learn about depression or anxiety or PTSD in school? There's not a class on
No,
that. They
no.
don't really teach that. You just learn from what you see from your peers or media. And that's not bad, but it's also not always informative. So,
Or accurate.
exactly. So,
Okay.
there could be a lot of misunderstandings, to say the least.
So, I mean, I know there's no magic number or magic formula, but in general, how much time do you spend kind of teaching clients about their diagnoses, teaching them about the various aspects that you just explained?
Mm-hmm.
And do you do it at the beginning? Like, how do you lay this out? What like if they're coming to you, what would they expect to see from you?
Okay. So, as far as like times and really how we go around the process, I usually like to start at the base of understanding what they do know and what they don't know. At that point, I like to give some basic information how the brain is affected, what neurons are being affected, what hormones might be changing within your body, what emotional responses you might be
Mm-hmm.
seeing. Kind of give the groundwork. At that point, I always think, okay, well, if you want to learn more, let's do this, but I want you to be able to explore on your own. Do some research and come back into session and let's explore what you found, because I always find that things mean a lot more to an individual if they find it themselves and they connect to it. And yeah, of course we can make this a textbook education day where I'm talking to you like I was a teacher explaining XYZ, but how many people are going to always take that home when they're not really there for an education, they're there for therapy? So having a person be invested within their own learning and understanding, I've noticed, makes a difference within their ability to understand themselves. So starting with the basics and then growing from there and where they're interested. Like, we'll usually take one session, we'll start with the basics. After that, be like, okay, now that you know these, what are the areas that you would like to learn more about? And that's what they'll look over that week. Come back in, what did you learn about that? Was that interesting? Was there things that you were surprised about? And then see if there's more areas that they want to learn about. And honestly, it's pretty wonderful seeing people get so surprised. They're like, oh, I found this makes so much sense. And I'm like, whoa, look at that. And they're like, oh, I'm so glad I know this now. And I'm like, so it means a lot more when people are able to find that information and really connect with it.
Okay. So, you said something that made me think. A handful of sessions, and I'm sure there's points, where then you end up going back to some more psychoed as you uncover more things that are happening in somebody's life. But what do you say to that person who says, "Look, I came to you for therapy, not to learn about my diagnosis." Right? Like, when's the real therapy going to begin?
Right. And that is a fair question, let's be honest. Usually my response for that would be, well, learning about your diagnosis and how it affects you is part of therapy, because if you don't know how your brain functions, if you don't know how your chemical imbalances or balances work for you, then really how are we going to be able to unpack things that struggled or were hard for you in the past and then learn different ways to do it? Because if you don't know, like, for example, let's say you're driving a car and you don't know the difference between left and right, but you do know red and green. So you're like, I'm only here to drive forward and I never need to focus on anything else.
Right.
But let's say one day you decide you want to go to the store right next to you and you have to take a left. Oh, wow. You don't know how to do that because you never focused on it, because you only thought that you had to drive straight forward. You're never going to be able to stop on anything that you drive by and actually see what you want to enjoy. So having the full scope picture really makes a difference. And if you only take one approach at it and only see it from one line, you're going to be missing a lot about you. And that's not really full, complete therapy. That's just kind of halving it. And I'm not here to waste their time.
Right. So I think the last thing I want to ask you for today is about, let's say someone's seeing a therapist and their therapist hasn't laid this out for them. They haven't, taken the time to say, hey, by the way, this is what I diagnosed you with. These are some things I think you should know, things to that nature. In fact, I hear a lot of therapists when we're networking and stuff that are a bit apprehensive about putting labels on people.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that, but I'm of the same mindset as you. If you know where we're coming from, then it will inform you for the goals and for everything else that's happening. So, okay, so let's say I'm seeing a therapist and Sally Lou, my therapist, does not tell me what she diagnosed me with, right? And she doesn't kind of give me that psychoed that you were just talking about. Can you give us some tips for maybe like what we might be able to do to advocate for ourselves to find out that information? Because, okay, you're watching now, so now you know it would be helpful, but your therapist didn't do this, or whatever the case may be. What do you have to say to those people who may need to have a hard conversation with their therapist?
I always look at it this way: your therapist is there to help you, not the other way around. So, if your therapist isn't helping you in an area that you need help and they are able to, then there might be some concerns there. Now, like, let's say they know nothing about, like, for example, addiction. And so you want to learn more about addiction, but they're not specialized in that. At that point, they'd probably forward you to someone who does know something about addiction, because that would be an ethical approach to make sure that you got the care that you needed. But let's say you had a therapist and they're like, well, I don't feel comfortable telling you about depression. At that point, you have to ask yourself, is this the right therapist for you? And maybe in many ways they are. And they've helped you grow from a lot of different things. That's wonderful. But you also need to make sure that you're putting your needs first, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's paying for those sessions. You're the one who's going to be doing that work outside of that office, and you're the one who's going to have to live with every part of your life after those sessions. So if it's not helping you, then is it really something that you want to keep on investing more time in, or is there other opportunities that you would like to look into?
Okay, a good fit is definitely important. What if you think it is a good fit, but they just haven't brought up the subject? How do you think, how might you suggest somebody ask their therapist about their diagnosis or,
Yeah, that one's a really good question. Thank
yeah,
you, Carla. At that point, I just say be honest with your therapist. Hey, I was watching a video earlier this week and they were talking about, we'll go back with depression. And it sounded really interesting, and I just wanted to kind of explore that more with you.
Right.
See if there was some things I should look into myself and start that growth your own. Be able to advocate for your needs with your therapist, because maybe your therapist didn't realize that was something that you wanted to explore. That's possible. They can't read minds. I know, it's crazy, right? Like, you think we could.
Or here's a crazy thought. We thought we told you what your diagnosis was, and we thought we had the conversation, but somehow we got sidetracked because something else came up, like a crisis, and we thought we went back to it and we didn't. So there's a lot of reasons why maybe it didn't happen.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think advocating for yourself, and personally, I would rather have a client come to me and say, Carla, what is my diagnosis, and explain it to me, please.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of therapists are there to help you. I know there's a power differentiation there, but really there isn't. The therapist is there to support you. And so advocating for your needs, most therapists will be like, yes, that means you're comfortable and we can keep on growing together.
Exactly.
So it's always a good thing to do.
Well, I hope you guys learned something. And if you don't know, if you're seeing a therapist, okay, and you don't know what your diagnosis is, and or you do know what your diagnosis is, but don't really understand the ins and outs of it, please, please, please advocate for yourself and ask and do a little research. And hopefully everyone's with a therapist who's the right fit. If you're not, please don't feel bad or guilty about looking for someone who's a better fit. So until next time, remember, you can change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing in on your overall well-being. And I want you to continue working on being the best you possible. Bye.